How will you become the best version of yourself? What does it even mean to be the best version of yourself? Is that health? Is it your body? Is it your mental? When you think about your quote unquote ultimate self, the highest version of you, there's probably a physical embodiment of that. But there's also the internal, there's also the mental, there's also the psychological, the health of your body. So today, we're going to talk about how you can have it all. Welcome to Change Made Easy. Changing your habits, routines, and behaviors is hard. We make it easy. I'm Paul Levitin. I help anyone who feels stuck, stagnant, or burned out in life to create positive change in ways that stick forever. It's that easy. The Buddha said, "To keep the body in good health is a duty. Otherwise, we shall not be able to keep our mind strong and clear." And while it was true over 2,000 years ago when the Buddha said it, it's even more true today. I believe that health and happiness are two sides of the same coin, the mental and the physical. If you work on one without working on the other, you're not really getting anywhere. And that's why I'm so excited for you to hear this conversation with Dr. Tracy Gapin. Dr. Gapin is on a mission to change the narrative around wellness. He focuses on a personalized approach to optimal performance that aims to reshape how we understand and address wellness at every age. And he particularly is passionate about helping those in high-pressure careers and high-earning work environments, because he knows that can lead to burnout. Dr. Gapin explains why he's so passionate about helping specifically men as they age so that they're able to understand the change in their hormones and things like testosterone and how that affects them, but also all of us as a society, because all of us have men in our lives. He also explains where to start if you're in a limited time and energy, but want to fix your internals and understand your blood work. And we also get into more general topics like how stress factors into gut and immune health, how to think about motivation to spur yourself into action, and what are epigenetics and why it should matter to you. So please enjoy this enlightening conversation with Dr. Tracy Gapin. What does it mean to be the best version of you?
Great question. So being the best version of yourself means that your mind and body are really functioning at the highest level. I work with entrepreneurs, typically age 40 to 55 or so. And what happens when everyone passes the age of 40, everything starts to change, right? Everything starts to go downhill. Hormones decline, energy production declines. We start to suffer a lot of physiologic processes in our body don't work like they used to. And so I see so many men, especially, and my passion and focus has always been men's health for the last 25 years, is men start to notice that their cognitive function declines. They can't think as sharply as they could before. Their mental acuity, their concentration, their focus is off. They notice that their energy is not the same, where especially middle of the afternoon, they hit a wall and they can't keep going. They have this overwhelming fatigue that can sometimes really limit their performance at work. It can limit their performance in sports, and it can certainly affect the way they interact with their family. A lot of guys will have problems losing weight, where they remember how they used to look, they remember how they used to feel, and they can't quite get back there again, where guys suffer with belly fat, women have fat in the buttocks more so. And I hear all these high-performing leaders tell me that I'm in the gym, I'm working out, but it's not working like it used to. I can't recover the same. Or I did a heavy workout yesterday, and it takes me a day or two to recover from that. And so a lot of changes are happening over the age of 40 where our mind and body just are not functioning at the level they used to. And that creates a challenge. And so when I talk about be the best version of yourself, it's how do I get your mind functioning so you have crystal clear clarity and focus? How do I get your body functioning so that you're able to be at your highest level of performance, whether you're at work, whether you're playing sports, whether you're at home being a parent, so that you can really show up the way that you want to be?
Yeah, it's great summary right there, showing up the way that you want to be, and that's unique to the individual. And I love the way you talk about both the body and the mind. To me, I always say those are two sides of the same coin. And I don't believe that you can be physically healthy if your mind isn't sharp. And I don't believe that you will ever be mentally clear, happy, fulfilled, whatever word you choose, if your body isn't up to par to be able to do the things that you want to do, especially as we age, because a lot of guys and women as well have the experience of being in great shape in their 20s, maybe in their 30s, but then it's like the 40s, 50s, and 60s and beyond are flushed down the toilet. And it's like, that's your whole life. Who cares about what you do in your 20s? You can do anything in your 20s. You can go out drinking until 4 o'clock in the morning, wake up, run a marathon, eat a salad and then a Big Mac, and then it all just somehow evaporates off you. And I've had the experience when I've worked in the gym. I train, a lot of my clients were 40, 50, 60 plus. And they would always say something interesting to me, which is like, it just feels like things are harder. It just feels like I'm doing the same thing that I used to do at 20 and it's different now. And what I would say to them is it doesn't feel that way. It is that way. Your body is changing. So I'm curious, what are some of the things that are happening decade by decade that make this so much more challenging?
Yeah, a lot. In short, we can look first at hormones. So hormones, especially, is the biggest, in my mind, the biggest issue when it comes to men, especially. So starting at the age of 40, we definitely see a decline in testosterone year by year. And that's something that's always been the case. But what we have found recently is that we are noting a population level decline in hormones, especially testosterone, thyroid, et cetera. There were 3 recent longitudinal studies that looked at testosterone levels in men over 20 to 30 years. And what they found was that for age-matched groups, we have seen almost a 50% decline in free testosterone. What I mean by that is you look at a 45-year-old guy today, and his free testosterone is almost half of what a 45-year-old guy had 20, 30 years ago. That's a massive decline. The hormones are responsible for energy, cognitive function, metabolism, ability to build muscle, burn fat, mood, bone health, muscle health, et cetera. Cardiovascular health is intimately tied to it. And so a big factor is hormones. And I can't tell you how many men I've seen where they think they're doing okay, and you check their hormones, especially testosterone, and it's nowhere close to where they need to be. So testosterone is a big part of it. I emphasize that we have over 50 hormones in our body that we care about, and it's typically never just one.
Hey, real quick, we'll be back to the show in just a few seconds, but right now I have to ask you for a huge favor. If you're getting value out of this episode so far, take 2 seconds and share it with a friend. I mean, right now, literally, hit the little share button and send it in a text to your roommate or your cousin or your mom or your brother or your sister. Seriously, spread the love. If you like what you're hearing, then that's the best way that you can show support for this show. Because maybe you're like Eliza Kay, who said, "This podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me." Or you're like Dalton, who said, "Paul is an amazing host, and his podcast is a must listen." Don't you want to share this awesomeness with your friends and family? Don't be a gatekeeper. It only takes a second. It helps me grow and reach a new audience, and you seem like a genius friend who recommends new, awesome podcasts. We all win. All right, go send that text, and now let's get back to the show.
And so when we see low testosterone, we'll often see low thyroid. DHEA, which is a steroid hormone precursor to testosterone, that's just almost just as important when it comes to energy and metabolism and mood and so on. We see issues with nitric oxide production. There are 2 major pathways of nitric oxide production. One of them pretty much shuts down between the age of 40 and 50, and you rely on the other one. And if your diet's not sufficient, then you'll have inadequate levels of nitric oxide. Vitamin D is actually a hormone, and vitamin D deficiency is associated with a lot of issues. Estrogen, and it goes, growth hormone, it goes on and on, all these hormones that we care about. So that's a big part of it. The other part of it is gut health. And this doesn't get enough attention, but I think it's important that the listener recognizes that your gut controls almost everything that happens in your body. So the microbiome, which is basically the balance of organisms in your gut, that includes bacteria, viruses, parasites, etc., really controls almost everything that's happening. Your immune system, energy, hormones, neurotransmitters, immune system, it goes on and on, the effects of your gut. And so one of the common things we see are things like serotonin and dopamine. These are critical neurotransmitters in your brain that are responsible for mood, are dramatically affected by your gut and by issues with the integrity and the health of your gut wall, which is affected ultimately by the microbiome. And so a lot of times We'll see issues with mood, depression, stuff like that, psychological issues, that anxiety, especially, that originate in the gut, which is not the first place you would think of, right? We can see issues with toxins in our environment. I talked about this on many other podcasts about endocrine disruptors, which are chemicals, toxins in our environment, which are causing autoimmune disease and hormone issues and infertility. And a lot of it's related to toxins in the food that we eat, in the water we drink, and our personal care products as well. So to answer your question, what's the source of all of it? I think that it's hormones. I think it's gut health. I think it's toxins. And then we haven't even touched on the other lifestyle stuff like stress and sleep and nutrition, et cetera.
Right. And okay, perfect example that you just gave there, right? Hormones. We have the stuff around us, our environment, like you said, the toxins and things like that. There's our gut. Then there's stress, there's life, there's work, there's a million other things. So where, for the listener, the person who is in it right now, like, where do you start? Because already I hear that and I go like, it's so much that
That's a lot. Yeah.
I shut down. Right.
Yeah.
So where do we even start? And where is the low hanging fruit here? Because I'm always looking for the levers where I can do the least to get the most. So where is the place that I can put in some effort and see returns in how I'm feeling? Like you said, my mental, my emotional, my depression, or whatever else. Like, where should I focus? If I do have a limited bandwidth and limited attention, where is the place to go first?
Great question. I always recommend diagnostics. I recommend get tested first, and that's going to give you a very clear roadmap for what are the biggest issues that are affecting you. You mentioned low-hanging fruit. Everyone out there is talking about eat this, not that, do this, not that. And yeah, those all may be right for you, but we're all dealing with different challenges. And I give examples of men who look like they're in the best health of their life, and you aspire to look like them. And Bob Harper is a classic story I give, a trainer from The Biggest Loser. And age 51, he had a massive heart attack. And so diet and exercise, yes, they're important without question. And we also need to understand what specifically is right for you. And that may be different than the guy next to you. And yeah, my buddy John did this and he got great results, but what's right for me? And so get your hormones checked. Get blood work done to look at markers of inflammation. Get blood work done to look at specific key hormones. Get testing done to look at your gut health. Start tracking your own data to understand if what you're doing is working or not. So, for example, I like to talk about KPIs for your health, or what health metrics can we use to understand if what we're doing is working or not. And so low-hanging fruit would start to just track just track your nutrition, track your sleep, track your stress. And I'll give you some ways you can do that. So nutrition first, I would get an app on your phone. One is Chronometer. One is MyFitnessPal. And there are free versions of both. And simply track your intake for 3 days. Start with 3 days. Now, there's something called the Hawthorne effect. Hawthorne effect is a scientific concept that whatever is measured is affected directly. Just by tracking something, by watching something, you change behavior. And so just by tracking your intake, it's going to change what you eat, how much you eat, the quality of what you're eating. But it's going to give you a really clear idea of the macronutrients, the protein, fats, and carbs. Start with just that alone. And I'm not even telling you how much you should be eating or shouldn't be eating. Just by tracking alone, it's going to be incredibly powerful, insightful for you to see. Most people don't eat enough protein, so this is going to need to be individualized. But in general, most people need to be eating at least 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per day based on their ideal body weight. So, for example, if your ideal body weight is 160, it'd be 160 times 0.8 at a minimum of what you should be eating, which is about 128 grams of protein. Most guys eat about half of that on a daily basis. And so one of the simplest things you can do is start to, again, track your intake and look how much protein you're eating. And you'll realize, holy cow, I'm not even close. So that's one thing you could do. When it comes to sleep, you can track your sleep. And I'm wearing an Aura, I'm wearing an Apple, I use Garmin, I use Whoop, I use Fitbit. You can use any device you want. In general, when it comes to sleep, the Aura is probably the most validated, accurate device out there. Apple has come a long way. It's gotten better. Garmin's okay as well. You want to aim for 7.5 hours of total sleep. But more importantly, you need an hour of deep sleep and 2 hours of REM sleep. Those are the critical stages, the quality stages of sleep that you need for repair and recovery. So hour of deep, 2 hours of REM would be targets for you. So that's nutrition, that's sleep. You can track stress. There's a metric called heart rate variability, and you can get a Polar H10 HRV strap. It's like $80 you can get on Amazon, and you can connect it to your phone to a free app, Elite HRV. And every morning when you wake up, first thing you should do is sit down and for 2.5 minutes, measure your HRV, heart rate variability. Similar to your resting heart rate, it is a direct measure of your internal stress levels. Now, Paul, if you ask most guys if you're stressed, they're going to say, no, I'm not stressed. I'm fine. It doesn't affect me. It doesn't bother me. Well, I say BS. It's something that you may not be willing to accept, but it's happening whether you recognize it or not. And it's not necessarily stress from psychological worry about finances or marital issues or whatever. It may be internal stress from the wrong food for you, or alcohol, or poor sleep, or other hormone issues or micronutrient imbalances, other sources of internal stress that you're measuring. So my point is, the low-hanging fruit is to start to measure and track these data points in your life, whether it's lab work, whether it's biometric devices that can track KPIs to understand if what you're doing is working or not. And that's really the beginning of how you can start to make a difference.
Yeah, so great one. I love all of the tangible, really actionable things that you've given with names, with different pieces of tech, with all different things like that people can go out and check out right now. And KPIs are a great way to put it. It's what gets measured gets paid attention to. It's like you said, the Hawthorne effect. In my nutrition coaching, the first thing that I do with people is exactly what you said. It's like, let's just write down what you're doing. And I'll tell them, don't even change what you're eating. Just write it down. And they'll go, oh, well, like, are you sure? Like, you want me to just eat like poorly or something like that? And I'm like, well, understand that just through the simple virtue of you writing things down, you're going to subconsciously make changes. You might go, ooh, do I really want to write down 4 pieces of pizza today? So I'm going to eat only 2. You're going to make these little changes, right?
That's right.
And so this all comes back to awareness. So when I teach behavior change. I teach what I call the change loop, which is AEA, awareness, education, action, right? So awareness is the first step. You can't change what you don't know is happening. And education is, okay, now I know this is a thing. What do I do about it? The last step is action. And you can get caught up on any of those parts on the loop, right? If you don't know, then you don't know. If you're not educated, then you can't take the action. But I feel like most people are stuck at action because we have all the information. The information is out there. You've done tons of podcasts. You have a TED Talk. You have all of this stuff. There's books. There's everything is out there. So I'm always interested for someone like you who works with elite performers. And elite performers are people who take action. So what do you see as the difference between the people who take the action to get the result and the people who stay stuck and spinning their wheels at the point of taking action?
Great question. How do you get and now we're getting on the whole topic of your podcast, which is behavior change, and how do you get people to actually decide to make it and to make that change? And it's a decision. And I think it comes down to understanding how do you keep yourself accountable. And I love BJ Fogg, Tony Habits, outstanding book for any listener out there. Behavior equals motivation plus ability plus prompt. And for most people, motivation is there, yes, but I would really emphasize that we need to make motivation more focused on the outcome. So let me give you an example. When I work with guys, the key is what's your why. My example of this is my why is being the best dad that I can be, the best father. My life, everything is about how can I be the best dad for my 2 amazing little kids. And everything I do is in alignment with that. And I ask myself, is this behavior, action, whatever it may be, in alignment with that? Is the best father in the world going to do this action? And if it fits, then perfect. If it doesn't, then you got to reevaluate. And Atomic Habits talks about this as well. So first is that. So that's the motivation part. I think is to be really clear on your why and be very intentional in constructing your life and your daily habits around your why. But then it really comes down to the ability part of it. And this is, how do you set up those habits for success? And I think so many of us don't really think through the specific granular, how do I do this? I'm going to lose New Year's resolution classic. I'm going to lose 10 pounds. Well, that's an aspiration. What are your actual habits that you're going to incorporate to accomplish that? And so if the only food that you have access to is Pop-Tarts and bagels and sugary cereal, then that's what you're going to eat because that's what's there in the house. But if you have intentionally packed your refrigerator with high protein Greek yogurt, with high protein cottage cheese, you have protein powder and blueberries to be able to make a protein smoothie in the morning. Now what you've done is you improved your ability to follow through with your motivation because you have set yourself up for success by intentionally designed and crafted your life and your environment around that behavior. And so you have no choice but to do that. And so that's what's really all about. So like for me, I'll give you an example for me. When I do my HRV measure in the morning that I mentioned to track your stress, I have my HRV strap. For the longest time, I had it in my whole office. But in the morning when I drink my coffee at 6 a.m., that's not where I'm sitting. And so, oh, shoot, I forgot to do it because so now it's sitting there right on the coffee table next to where I sit in the morning. And so I know that I've set myself up for success, that it's right there for me. I know when I open the fridge, it's full of fresh fruits and vegetables. They're waiting for me. And so I'm going to be able to make healthy habits that are easy because it's right there for me. My supplements that I take are right there by my toothbrush. So when I'm brushing my teeth in the morning, there's my supplements. When I brush my teeth at night, there are my supplements. And so it's these little tiny micro decisions you're making throughout the day that sound so ridiculous and silly. Yeah, whatever. Give me the magical things. Those are the magical things. These little tiny micro decisions you make every day, they add up, and that's how you do it.
Yeah, so many great points there. Again, I really love the tangible action steps that you're throwing out. Love that you brought up Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. People bring up Atomic Habits on the show all the time. It's the number one most recommended book for good
Yeah.
reason. It's a great book.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
BJ Fogg, Tiny Habits, to me is the book of all books on habits. And I've read every book on habits. And like
Yeah.
if you're going to read one, to me, that's the most just matter of fact, actionable for anyone listening. It's a good read. It's so just
Agreed.
I mean, it's the only book you need to read. If you ever want to read one book on habits, Tiny Habits is it. And it's because exactly what you said. It's about breaking it down into those small micro decisions, tiny habits that then lead to success and then make your success inevitable. Where so many people, I think, try to set themselves up. They hear exactly what we were talking about at the beginning. They're like, I got to change my testosterone. I got to change my gut health. I gotta exercise more. And it's like there's so much that it becomes so overwhelming. But
Yeah.
like you said, if you can set yourself up for success by just changing the way your house is organized, by changing the things that are available to you, you're giving yourself an opportunity to succeed. And then it doesn't become such a challenge. It becomes something that happens more naturally. And this is the
Right.
type of thing that I think that the top performers, the elite performers of the world, they do almost naturally. They found ways in their work, in their relationship, in their lives to make what they want to do easier and put
Right.
more friction in between some of the things that they don't want to do. And I think that's a piece that we miss out on. So I'm curious if there's something that you've used, an example for yourself of a habit or something that you were trying to do less of, right? See, we always talk about the things that we want to do more of, something that you've tried to move away from and how you made that or broke that habit.
Yeah, great question. The opposite of how do you, instead of creating healthy habits, how do you stop bad habits? And I think the best way to do that is to change, like BJ Fogg talks about, make it harder to do that and or remove the prompt. And so one of the biggest things for me is social media. And I can go on Twitter and I can go down rabbit holes. Next thing you know, it's an hour later and I'm reading all kinds of random stuff that is not necessarily on point with what I could or should be doing. And so the way to fix that is you just simply identify the prompt. And so just remove it from your phone. So that's been the biggest game changer for me, is to remove apps from my phone. So if I want to look at Twitter when the time is right and I have free time and I want to, yeah, I can go on my laptop and do that. But I found that the prompt for me was when I would sit there with my phone. And I had just a moment, and next thing was 10, 20, 30 minutes later, I'm still on and so identified that the prompt was having the app on my phone, and now it's no longer there. So now the ability is much, much harder, and I don't have the prompt there as well. And so little things like that, I think that, yeah, that's the best example I can give you. But I think that the key is to identify if you're doing something that's not healthy for you, what is the prompt that's making you do that? So it may be that your bad habit is that you're scrolling on your phone at night when you're supposed to be sleeping. So what I would recommend, sleep is so important and we tend to neglect it. We tend to stay up late and then you're scrolling on your phone, looking on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, whatever it may be. And actually you wasted an hour of potentially good quality sleep. Set an alarm on your phone. So for me, it's 10:30 every night, 10:30. And 10:30 to 6 is my sleep window. That's it. It's not an option to do anything else. And so at 10:30, my alarm on my phone goes off and my phone stays there wherever I am, kitchen, living room, wherever it may be. And when I go in the bedroom, my phone's not with me. I don't have it. It's not an option. So now there's no choice but to simply go to sleep. And we can talk all about sleep hygiene habits, but that's one of the key things is don't bring your phone into your bedroom if you're going to lay in bed and scroll on your phone when you should be going to sleep. And so I like to say the bedroom is for two things only, and one of them is sleep, and that's it. And so I think that's really the key is identifying what's the trigger, what's the prompt that's making you do that behavior, and how can you get rid of it, make it harder for you to do that behavior.
Yeah, great points. It's interesting. My vice is also scrolling on social media, and I've had to put a million different roadblocks in place to try to stop me from doing it. And that's the thing is, it's just like you said, if you really want to, you can still go to your computer and go on Twitter. And just like if I really want to, I can still find a way to get on Instagram and waste 2 hours of my life because I will do it 100% of the time. And sometimes I do want to do that. But the more friction I can put in between me and doing that
Yep.
thing, the less chance that I have of it happening automatically and me not even realizing and going, oh my gosh, I can't believe I just wasted 2 hours when I was just going to open the app
Right.
for 30 seconds. So I appreciate that so much. And I want to circle back towards the beginning. We talked about hormones. We talked about the gut a little bit, but one more topic that I know that you're an expert in that I would love for you to explain a bit, because this is a concept that even confuses me. And I mean, I'm not the smartest guy, but it's epigenetics. And so
Sure.
I was wondering if you could explain exactly what epigenetics
Yeah.
are and how it
Sure.
factors into our quest for
Yeah.
being the best version of
Sure.
ourselves.
So epigenetics is the science of how our lifestyle, our environment, our behavior affects genetic expression. So what that means is that we have the same genetic code in every single one of our cells, and you're born with it. You got it from your parents. But how is it that identical twins can actually grow up and be very different individuals? And the answer to this is epigenetics. And so what this means is that genes are simply turned on or turned off based on marks, if you will, on the DNA. It could be methylation is the most common. It could be acetylation or other chemical processes that will put marks on the DNA, and it will change the configuration of the DNA, change the way it gets transcribed, and ultimately converted into proteins. So what does this mean? So for example, things like exercise, things like meditation, even things like good quality olive oil can actually turn on certain genes. Fascinating. How this really comes into play, how it's relevant is things like the examples I can use here are things like ApoE. So ApoE, apolipoprotein E, is a gene that codes for proteins that regulate how your body metabolizes saturated fats and sugars to a lesser extent as well. So the ApoE gene is your body's way of metabolizing saturated fats. Well, for some people who have a certain variant of this ApoE gene, again, this is simply based on your DNA, you are at an increased risk of early cardiovascular disease, early cognitive decline, early Alzheimer's disease, just if you have this variant of the ApoE gene. It's called the ApoE4, and you can have either one copy or two copies of the ApoE4 allele, okay? That puts you at an increased risk for cardiovascular disease, cognitive decline, Alzheimer's disease. However, what they found was that for those individuals who are an ApoE4 variant, who limit their saturated fat intake, and for those ApoE4 variants who limit their sugar intake, that risk that I talked about is gone. It normalizes to the population. By simply changing what you're eating, it completely changes your risk of developing those chronic diseases I talked about just based on how you're eating. And so a lot of examples like that of how understanding that can affect everything. And so we talk about epigenetics from the perspective of understanding your genetics can help us it's not that this gene says you should eat that. It's not quite that specific yet, at least. What it really is we understand based on genetics, this propensity, and we know that if we change behavior, it's going to affect that outcome. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And
Yeah.
it's so interesting. It's similar to, again, in the beginning with hormones and the gut. All of this stuff is interconnected. It's our activities and what we do affects the way that our body is, and the way that our body is affects
Sure.
what we do. And it kind of is this loop where everything affects everything. So I'm really appreciative of you breaking that down so concisely. I have a few last questions that are just kind of my wrap up questions, neither here nor there. The first one is, what is the change that you want to see in the world?
So I spent 23 years in traditional healthcare. And what I did not see until late in that time was how focused we are on just treating disease. And I would have 6 minutes with you. As a urologist, I had such a busy schedule. I'd often see 50 patients a day. And it was a 6-minute window for me to see you and get everything done. And it's all focused on ICD-10 diagnosis codes. Diagnosis, drug, or diagnosis, surgery, perhaps. But it's very reactive, focused on stamping out treating disease until the next time. Whether it's cancer, whether it's heart disease, whether it's a kidney stone, whatever it may be, we treat that problem, and then we'll see you next time. So to answer your question, my passion, my focus is to really redefine men's health, to reimagine health, human performance, and longevity for all of us, and take a very different perspective where we're focused on precision, we're focused on being proactive, we're focused on being personalized and preventative. And what can we do not to treat disease, not to wait until there's a problem, but what can I do? When I say be the best version of yourself, what can you do to optimize your mind and body so that you can function at the highest level? And when we do that, what's going to magically happen is suddenly the incidence of chronic disease is going to plummet. And to me, that's really what I believe has to happen. Our healthcare system is failing miserably and is not sustainable. And I think the way to change that is to start before there's a problem.
100%. I completely agree with you. And it's a big goal. It's a big dream. It's a big mission, but someone's got to do it. So kudos to you for, for taking that on.
Yeah.
The last question that I have for you is for listeners right now. If you had one piece of advice, one action step that they could take right now today, as soon as this episode ends, to make change easier, no matter what the changes they're trying to make, whether it's their health, their wealth, their relationships, or anything else, what's the most tangible thing you can give people to make that process of change easier?
Be clear in your why. What's your why? What's it all about? And it's amazing what that does to really drive your passion toward following through. And then I'm going to give you two answers. I already told me to give you one, but I'm going to give you two. The other one would be to measure everything. Measure what you're eating, measure how long you're sleeping, measure your labs. When you measure something, you can manage it.
The reality is, aging is real. It happens to all of us. Our bodies are always changing. Every year, certainly every decade. But that doesn't mean that you have to resign to just getting worse as you get older. By taking the advice that Dr. Gapin laid out, like getting diagnostics. Before you go, I just have to ask you for a huge favor. If you enjoyed or got value from this episode at all, then take a moment and leave a rating and review in the podcast app that you're listening or watching on. If you like the show and you want me to continue to create more episodes and be able to get awesome guests that will help make changing your life easier, then this is the best way you can show support. You can leave a 5-star review on iTunes like Eliza K, who said, "This podcast is both warm and inviting, but real enough to push and motivate me." Thank you, Eliza. Or you can be like Dalton, who said, "Paul is an amazing host, and his podcast is a must listen." Thank you, Dalton. And thank you to all of the over 100 people who have taken the time to rate and review this show 5 stars on iTunes, or the dozens who have left 5-star reviews on Spotify. It only takes a minute, and it helps me grow, it helps me reach a new audience, and it lets me know that this is helping someone, which just feels good. All you have to do is go to the show page of whatever app you're listening to and hit the little 5 stars. Or go to the comments section on YouTube and boom, that's it. And if you really want to show love, take a screenshot when you do it and tag me in your stories on social media at Change Made Easy, and I'll shout you out in an upcoming episode. All right, go leave that rating, and I'll see you back here every Tuesday and Thursday with new episodes of Change Made Easy. And finding out about your hormones, your blood levels, you can take back control of your body and your physical and mental well-being and make sure that you're better at 40 or 50 than you were at 20 and 30. It's not impossible, I know, because that's what I'm doing. A few simple shifts in your mindset and a few actionable shifts in your day-to-day routine can make all the difference. That is change made easy. If you want to learn more about what Dr. Gapin has going on, go to thegapininstitute.com. That's THEGAPIN institute.com to learn more. You can also check out Dr. Gapin's book, The Codes of Longevity, which is available on Amazon, and I have it all linked in the show notes.